Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. We only have one more episode left before we close out season 4. Then we are taking a 2-week break, and we'll be back with a brand new season 5. So make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you'd like to be a part of the Patreon community, make sure you go to patreon.com/Melinda Hale. Today, joining me on the show is social media influencer, photographer, and content creator. He's also an LGBTQ and mental health advocate, Owin Pierson. Owin, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Melinda. I am so excited to be here. We've been in this allyship program together with Yahoo for almost a year now. So it's nice to put faces and build these relationships as we continue the allyship.
Absolutely. And every time you've spoken in the allyship group, I've always appreciated what you've had to say. And just in the last few months, in some of the statements you've made on social media, I was like, I have to have him on the show and have a conversation with him, because just your heart, your spirit, and what you stand for is so important right now. So I kind of want to go back, because there's so many layers to what you do and how you use your influence. And I know you matriculated from the East Coast to the West Coast to become a full-time influencer. So for you, why was that the right decision in terms of moving? And was there a particular moment in your life that kind of pushed you in that direction?
Well, I really appreciate you giving me this space, first off, because, you are a Black woman, I'm an Asian gay man, and we come from different backgrounds, right? Yeah. And I've always known, especially being a Hapa, my mom is Japanese, my dad is white, that I grew up my whole life with these different dichotomies of how I saw myself and how I was raised, because my parents, I was their firstborn son of 3 boys. They were missionaries before they were married. They worked really hard in the church that they grew up in to build a life that they thought was the best life for God and the world that they wanted to see for their future and for their kids. And I was their firstborn son that brought them that hope and that love. And as a baby, you don't expect anything. You don't do anything. You just poop, you eat, you sleep, and you get loved. You receive love your whole life, right?
Yeah.
And then at one point in your life, you realize that no, I have a responsibility on this earth to give back. And I was given that responsibility from a very young age. I quickly became one of the main faces in my church, if you will. I was an influencer in my church before an influencer was a thing in social media. I like to tell it like that. I was always against the grain. I'm left-handed, and in Japanese culture, being left-handed is seen as really bad, because especially for women, if you were left-handed in the back in the day, you weren't allowed to get married.
Wow.
Just really intense cultural things where they saw left-handed people as less than. And then from a young age as well, I knew I was always different. I always had same-sex attraction. I always saw boys as something I wanted to connect to, on a more intimate level. But then I was told from my parents and my church that homosexuality is wrong, and homophobia is the way of life. And our church's foundation was based on men and women. So I grew up from a very young age, very Christian roots, very roots based in a church that really saw the beauty in creating a family centered on God and centered on bringing about what Jesus's mission was and bringing about what Adam and Eve couldn't do. Just very rooted in this religious sect of bigger purpose. And I took on that role so seriously as a kid. I homeschooled myself when I was 16 years old in high school, because I was severely bullied for being Asian, severely bullied for being gay when I didn't even come out yet. I was just in the closet, but people could probably tell because of my mannerisms or something that I wasn't sure of. And I homeschooled myself. And from that moment, that was my big moment, because from there, I got pushed by God and the universe and my friends and family to be more of a youth minister in my church. I had more free time. So what I did was I took on the role of youth pastor very quickly. And as I got into that role, more and more of my friends my age and older started leaving the church. I just listened to your podcast episode earlier today with Sarah Jakes Roberts, and everything she said is honestly how I feel. She is really an embodiment of what my spirit I wish I was, and that sometimes I'm trying to be, because I am one of those hurt people she talked about. I have been so hurt my whole life. I've had to live this standard of life without ever having my voice heard.
Yeah. And
now my voice is being heard because so many of my Asian American brothers and sisters are getting killed. Something that you are too familiar with in your life.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to be in this space now where I feel finally heard, but it's not even my voice. It's the voice of millions of people that have never felt heard.
Yeah.
And I'm a very private person in many ways. I grew up very much focused on quality time and one-on-one relationships back home, where I had to develop relationships with these kids in the church that were focused on finding faith, discovering if God is something they wanted. But ultimately, how do we do that with people we don't know? Or how do we do
Yeah.
that with people that we're trying to get to know? And I built youth group programs focused on character development, focused on bonding as friendships. And there were many moments where these kids, they didn't have enough food for things, or they didn't have enough time to do things as their extracurricular activities at school. Or there were just moments where their parents were so busy with church work that they couldn't even go to youth group unless I physically drove to them, picked them up, brought them to youth group, and then brought them back home afterwards too. And I'm balancing a full-time job. I'm balancing full-time college. I'm balancing all my own personal life. But my heart was focused on these kids because when I was a kid, no one did that for me, at least in the moments that I needed. I had older brothers and
Yeah.
sisters that helped me, but I could never speak up about being gay. I couldn't speak up about my depression or anxiety. I just was holding on to way too much. And that built up to my point of moving to LA, where the year before I lost two of my best friends, one to overdose and one to a car accident, and they were the same age as me.
Mm,
And that changed my whole life because I was like, why are they not here? Why do I get to live when I don't even want to live?
right.
Why are they gone and I'm still here? And that made me push myself to go to LA because I saw opportunity there. I saw photography there. I saw something different for me. And I had no job lined up. I just drove cross country and made my way over there. And I'm actually doing a series right now on my page called Author of My Own Story, because that's been my
Hmm.
slogan for my whole life, my mantra. And I'm doing a once a week thing every Friday where I share, because I'm very much a documented person. Like, I've shared every moment of my life. I'm very vulnerable on my page. I've
Yeah.
shared all of it on social media. Like, I don't hide anything. I share the good, the bad, the ugly, the cute, the stupid, whatever it is. I share because, like, I'm a very in the moment person, and I
Yeah.
inherited that. I inherited that from my parents because that's what they are too. They've sacrificed so much to build their life, even though I don't agree with certain things. I can respect their integrity and who they are.
Hmm.
So right now, I'm doing this series where I'm going back, literally just resharing my posts and content, but in an organized way. So when people have time or space to know who I am versus just this famous quote unquote influencer or this person who's killing it in the field, it's like, no, but I have a past too, just like you. And
Yeah.
these are the
Yeah.
moments that got me to this point. If you want to look at it, please do. I'm putting it in an organized format for people to understand who I am.
And what I love about your entire story and the fact that you are vulnerable is so that people feel that you're relatable, because when you see a lot of influencers that have hundreds and thousands of followers, they have the blue checks or whatever, people will naturally think, well, there's probably nothing about them that I can relate to. So the fact that you're opening up yourself to people, sharing your story, it's going to probably save lives, Owen. I'm going to be honest with you, it
Mm-hmm.
probably will, but it gives you this sense of humanity, that you're not a celebrity, on social media, you're a human and
Right.
that you've had real human moments. And I think that we're getting into this, I don't want to call it a trend, but I hope that it sticks, just of people being more authentic, because you have seen like the fake creation on Instagram, the overly photoshopped things, but now we're starting to see people like, hey, this is my face without makeup, or this is what I
Mm-hmm.
went through, or I battled depression. So I think that
Mm-hmm.
influencers going that route is so important, because we need people to see influencers as humans, and they need to be relatable. I mean, I just talked about this with another
Yeah.
influencer on my podcast, about an influencer by the name of Rachel Hollis, who said, like, I'm not trying to be relatable. And I was like, that's the whole point of being an influencer. People look up to you. Like, why would you not want to be relatable? That doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
to me. So
Exactly.
I
I agree.
love I love that that's how you're using your platform. So, in terms of being an influencer, and with all of the
Mm-hmm.
issues that we've seen, with racial injustice, with LGBTQ
Mm-hmm.
rights, women's rights, the list goes on.
It does. It
I've
does.
always used my voice to put a spotlight on those issues, and I think that that's what's propelled me forward. But at what point do you think that people just have a responsibility to have to talk about those things when you get to a certain level of
Mm.
influence?
No, I appreciate your words of wisdom and encouragement. Like, that means so much to me because
Of course.
I always tell people also, and I tell myself this all the time, like, I'm not trying to become an influencer or a celebrity, but that's what everyone in the world kind of wants. Like, when you go to schools now, kids are like, I want to be a YouTuber or influencer versus like, I want to be a teacher or a doctor. Like,
Yeah.
when did that shift change? That means
Yeah.
there's a level of importance and integrity that has shifted in how we absorb content and how we absorb personal growth and self-worth.
Yeah.
And I got my degree in psychology and education. Like, I did that for my own personal life. So when I hear these kind of questions, I really go deeper into the mindset of who we are as individuals and what are we seeking in this short life or this long life, however we see it.
Hmm.
And one of my own personal goals is I really don't want people to want to be celebrities anymore or see that as important. Like yesterday was like the Grammys or Oscars, right? I don't even know. I didn't watch it. Like I don't have that mindset or time to like invest in other people's successes. Like I'm happy for them. And like there were so many big moments for the AAPI community yesterday and
Yeah.
the Black Lives Matter movement and just things that
Yeah.
are important. But we can't put people on pedestals that are doing that work and see ourselves as not a part of that story and narrative. We
Right.
are just as important as those people getting rewards and acclamations and all these amazing accomplishments of the hard work that they've been doing. But we need to do the work ourselves. And I've seen that for myself the moment I spoke up after I did a Clubhouse meeting with Eric Toda, the global marketing director of Facebook and Instagram. He invited me to that. And then he pushed Instagram's team, their whole team, to use my video of me speaking up in their AAP guide to stop Asian hate. And if you look through that guide on Instagram, I'm one of the only faces there, visible faces. Everything else is a graphic or a quote or a resource. There's maybe
Mm.
there's one other face, my friend YK, but I'm one of the main faces and I'm number 3. And when you put a face to something that says stop Asian hate, you're going to get hate. You're going to get everyone who doesn't believe in that phrase, doesn't think it's right, or the people that actually are part of white supremacy and the problem in this world, in this nation. And I got the brute force of that. I really did. And it was very emotional. As an individual human being, it hurt me to levels I didn't even know I
Yeah.
had hurt. But as a person who's Asian American, it hurt me more and gave me more invigoration and fire to fight this fight even more and create this group of people I've been calling the Asian Avengers, where we're working together to combat this and do bigger things than we are. And now I have a whole team of people that support me and I support them. And I've been seeing the work since I moved to Hawaii of the healing. Like
Hmm.
I thought in the past, like I had to get rid of my church background and my youth pastorship, but that's a part of me and it'll never be gone. It's always who I've been. But
Yeah.
I hid that part of me as an influencer because I thought those two couldn't connect. But I've been meeting so many people here. I'm from Virginia, and the Virginia slogan is Virginia is for lovers. And
Mm.
since I've been here, I've been connecting with other people that have a deep connection to Virginia, and we've never met before or talked before, but we meet here and we talk and share our stories. And it's so beautiful. It's so humbling that we can find ourselves in Hawaii, bond over something that is so small in many ways, but for us, it means so much.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
That's amazing. When you see influencers now posting
Hmm.
about, these issues, do you feel that it's coming from an authentic place or do you still think we're seeing a lot of performative
Mm.
advocacy?
Well, as someone who's been accused of it and and had to reflect on that word and what that means,
Hmm.
I always try not to see people from a place of judgment and shame or resentment or comparison, because
Hmm.
I felt all those things in my platform and in my upbringing as a closeted gay kid. Um, and I really truly like to believe in the good in all people. So I think
Yeah.
for the most part, everyone is just trying their best. You don't know where they're absorbing their content. We don't know their backgrounds of what they've been through. And if they're sharing something, it's utilizing their platforms, it's utilizing their voices to at least start a narrative in someone's life,
Hmm.
and hopefully at least in their own. Like as much as they're doing online, I'm sure offline is a lot more going on. And God and the universe really works. Once you speak up, once you put in the work, you are out there, and now like your mission is more visible to the universe and the energies working around, and you're going to get challenged in ways that you never thought possible or
Yeah.
never thought
Yeah.
you thought you could handle. But now that you've spoken up, even if it's just a sharing a story, even if it's just having one conversation or standing up for one moment in your life, it's going to create a chain reaction. And I like to believe in that versus thinking, oh, that person's being performative because they haven't spoken up in months. But we don't know what else they've been doing. We really don't. So why are we putting them on this pedestal again? Why are
Right.
we giving them so much power when we're
Right.
all just vulnerable human beings trying to figure it out?
That's a great point. That is a very good point. And I do think people are trying to do their best, but also I know people feel kind of at a loss of what to do because
Mm,
there are so many things happening. So my
yes.
advice for people, and I would love to know what your advice would be too, for people that are starting out, it's like you can just start by being honest, saying that you don't know what to do, but you want to figure out how to
Hmm.
speak out. So what would you suggest to an influencer that maybe their niche is something that's completely has nothing to do with social justice, but they want to
Right.
speak out? Like, how would you suggest that they start?
Well, I love that advice. And I think as influencers, one of the things I've noticed the most is we feel like it's us against the world. Like
Mm.
we don't really have coworkers. We don't have an HR team to talk to when things go wrong with
We have
brands, or
ourselves.
we have ourselves. Yeah. And it really creates this mindset of us against the world and all or nothing, and just really unhealthy narratives in our own head of what our worth is and how we seek support. So I think the main thing I would say is seek support. Like, lean on your other influencer friends, and you'll be so surprised the moment you share how much they're going to share too.
Mm.
And you can create this environment and create a better, safer space for your niche market or your people that before wasn't there. And you could actually make a wave of a difference for the people that are also feeling just like you are. And hopefully, like, you've been doing so much more advocacy than I have, right? Like, that's a comparison that's very valid. Like, I've just recently stepped into the advocacy space. I've been focused on mental health and LGBTQIA, which is advocacy in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
But you've been putting in the work of information, research, having a podcast, giving yourself up to this place that can really drain you.
Yeah.
So I also encourage people to look to people like you who have been doing the work, so you can get an education, you can learn, and look at people like me and be like, oh, Owen just started off. I can also just start from any place and work from there.
That's great advice. Solid advice. I want to recall something that you said about, when your face is a part of the Facebook, or I don't know if you said campaign or whatever it was, but in regards
Yeah.
to the Stop Asian Hate, and that you got a lot of hate from that. It's so crazy because I mean, I definitely have gotten that in terms of like speaking out about Black Lives Matter. And I've had, my tweets like published in different things. And I've had people freaking like find my email address and write me just
Oh my
hate email,
gosh.
right? But what's so sad to me about those situations is those two phrases, Stop Asian Hate and Black Lives Matter. It's just, the basis is so simple. Stop hating on the Asian community and just state that, yes, Black lives do matter. It's so
Yes.
minimal.
We're not asking for a lot.
I mean, you can't even stop. You cannot stop hating the Asian community. You cannot just say that Black people matter in this country. It's crazy what people will start to create. Like those phrases are the umbrella, and what they think those phrases means. It's like nobody says that Black lives matter more to anybody else. Nobody says that there's no hate happening to other communities. It's just that these are the things that we're focusing right now because these are the communities that are being affected disproportionately, And I just never understand when like you got hate from something, you literally are saying Stop Asian Hate, and then you're coming to me with
Getting hate. Yeah.
It makes no sense.
And a lot of the hate is like, Asian hate isn't real, and but then they'll be like, your nose is ugly, or you're not even Asian, you're only half, or blah blah blah, or like just so many things. Are like, if I wrote a research paper, you would be the resources and examples of why there is Asian hate. You know what I mean? Like,
oh my gosh. So let's talk a little bit about the movement of the Stop Asian Hate. What do you want people to understand and know about it? Because I think for me, speaking from the Black Lives Matter perspectives, when it started to really come to a head, it was more to me like, hey, now it's in prominence, but this has been happening for a very long time. So in terms of like discrimination and prejudice and racism against the Asian community, is that something that you have experienced that you're like, hey, now people are finally realizing this isn't just a brand new thing because of COVID, like it's been an issue?
Yeah, COVID and our last presidency just heightened everything that was already happening for years and years and for centuries. Like, there's embedded racism in Asian culture too. Like, Asians who are darker skinned receive more racism and discrimination than Asians who are lighter skinned. And I'm sure that's a reflection of the Black and white communities too.
Yeah, colorism is a huge issue.
Colorism is a real thing.
I didn't realize it was in the Asian community as well. Wow.
It's huge. It's a lot happening in Hawaii too. Less like the thing is, it's more passive, right? Like, Black voices, I feel like, are very strong, like, because your culture is very strong and beautiful and it speaks volumes. But Asian culture is about respect in the family, where it's like, you don't speak up unless your mom or dad tells you to. You don't share things unless there's a deeper reason beyond your own personal self. Individualism and independence is a very much an American cultural thing.
Yeah.
In Asian cultures, we don't have that. So that's why it seems like it's more passive. It seems like it's not as intense as the Black Lives Matter movement, but that's not the point. It's not about comparing apples and oranges.
Right.
It's saying that the Asian community has been going through this for a long time in so many moments. And like in Asian culture, for example, we wear masks no matter what. Like when we have a common cold or in general. I went to Taiwan and Japan in 2019 and they did that. And at first I was kind of like shocked about it because I came from an American background. So I didn't really experience that because that was my first time in Asia, really experiencing the cultures. So it was a culture shock for me, but then I understood it. It came from a place of respect. But then when COVID hit early in China and Japan and all over the world, specifically in Asia, that's when you started seeing the racial slurs and the comments happening, and people were blaming people from Asia. And I was on a speaking engagement for a travel expo in downtown LA, and a lot of the people that I was working with, they're from China and Taiwan, and they were telling me all the fears they had of their families and the worries they had in January. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I feel so bad, like it's so scary. And then when it hit in March, I was like, oh my gosh, like people are blaming them. People are blaming them, but they're actually going through the same fears and mentalities too.
Wow.
But they're being blamed. We're being scapegoated because it's happened to happen here, and the news shared their narrative of what they believe to be true versus actually what is happening behind the scenes, and making it look like the Asian community is to blame. And that's when I think all the attacks started happening, and the passive aggressive comments that I've always got. Like, I've been called chink. People at school, in my middle school, high school, would give me dental floss and be like, "Here's your sunglasses for your eyes," like all the time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Just little, and then I was a tall kid, so I was always like the caboose of the line for school. People be like, "Look out for Godzilla!" Like, just. It's like those comments, they hurt you. They make you who you are.
And they stay with you for forever. That's the thing. I can think of things that were said to me 4th grade, 5th grade, 10th grade, college, that I still are triggered by and get
triggers,
affected
right?
by. Yep, absolutely.
Triggers and trauma. And it's like where children are pure, and they really just absorb whatever the world gives them. So for kids to say this to other kids, it's coming from a place of hurt and pain from their parents or their environments that have taught and accepted this narrative that has continued on for so long.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about Christianity and our faith and beliefs. And, I've always pretty much grown up in a pretty progressive and liberal Christian household. And I've been very grateful for that. Yeah. I mean, my dad was never much a church person, but my mom is the one that took us to church. But, I was always surrounded by LGBTQ community. There was always women preaching in my church. Like, I was never aware of the hypocrisy and the contradictions until I went to a Christian college. And so my question to you is, are you consistently surprised? Because I am. I'm always surprised by how Christians respond to injustice when they're actually the ones that, in my opinion, if you really look at the teachings of Jesus, they're the ones that should be leading the charge in fixing racial injustice, in wearing a mask because you're protecting your neighbor. So how have you responded to see how the Christian community has responded to some of these things that have happened in the last year?
Well, that's an interesting perspective, because in my life right now, I don't consider myself Christian. Like, I don't consider myself wanting to even go step into a church right now.
I do not blame you.
and there's always a quote that like I would always resonate with, and it's I rather be out fishing thinking about God than at church thinking about fishing. And to me, that means so many layers of just conviction every day, what you're doing, the self-care you're doing, the thoughts you're doing. Like, I still pray to God every day, but my prayer isn't like going down on my knees and putting my hands together and like looking up at the cross. Like,
right.
That was like my upbringing, like really this intensive prayer. And I did prayer conditions, like 40-day prayer conditions, 7-day prayer conditions, 3-day fasts, like 3-hour runs to like build a relationship with God. Like, I did all those crazy activities and things that you do at church workshops and Christian camps, that like you shout and scream and you cry and you do prayer walks and do all the things to get a connection with God. And it worked for me in many layers. But in my life now as a young adult, 29 years old, like, I am tired, and I have a personal relationship with God. Like, God is my best friend in many ways. But when I see, that's what I'm saying all this, because I don't think it's right to even blame all Christians, because every Christian is so different,
For sure. Absolutely.
Every Christian church is so different too. Just because I don't accept all the gay people either in the way that, like, it's like gay people are problematic in many ways. Like,
right.
Like, it's like we're all individuals. It's not, we shouldn't box us into one thing, but it is important to recognize that Christians as a whole are doing something that's negatively affecting this community or this minority community. That's something something I really understand and see.
Yeah. So and that's more what I'm speaking about, because of course, for sure. I think, you can't put every single Christian, because I, identify myself as a Christian, and I'm clearly very, very progressive, but then there are very conservative Christians. But I guess I'm more speaking about, the basis of loving your
Mm,
neighbor when it comes to
mm,
these certain things. And you do see some people in the Christian community kind of be adverse to it. So to me, that's the
mm-hmm.
opposite of what a Christian is supposed to be doing and
Got it.
supposed to be practicing, because Jesus
Yeah,
would be in the front lines for all of
definitely.
these, you know, for all
Yeah,
of these movements for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so for you, how have you not only held yourself accountable, but held, you know, companies that you work with and other influencers accountable in terms of
Mm,
these situations? But I'm going to speak more specifically, you know, with Stop Asian Hate or even LGBTQ issues that I know that you're passionate about. How
mm.
have you managed to do that?
Well, first, like I said, like for me, vulnerability is my superpower. Like that's what I've leaned into. But also, cancel culture is so rampant right now, and it's so
Mm,
big for every community, and it's like so negative and toxic, and it's just so not my vibe at all. Like I
yeah.
hate that word. I hate that vibe, and it
Yeah.
just makes me feel like we're not giving anyone a space to like heal and grow. Like we're just saying
Yes.
cancel them, and then like we're pulling up all these old receipts and messages they did, and it's like,
From 10
okay,
years
but what
ago
this?
where it's like not relevant.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it's like if anyone's gonna cancel me, it's gonna be myself. Like no one's gonna
Mm,
cancel me except myself because I withhold my own integrity and my own values. I know myself better than anyone else except for God. So I need to cancel myself and learn from that versus anyone
right.
else doing it. So one thing I've applied to that is on my close friends on Instagram, which I added you recently to, is I do this thing called cabbage confessionals to my close friends where I like use one of the filters as a cabbage and I literally vent about the week of moments in my week.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also I'm so quick to post everything that's happened that day because I am a visual learner, but also I have really bad memory. Like I can't if you tell me someone's name or age or a date, like I will not remember it. It doesn't stay in my brain for some reason. So for me, photos actually helps me relive that moment and go back to that time in my life and be like,
Hmm.
okay, this is what was going through my life. This is what I was thinking that way. So I'm so open and vulnerable. I share everything, like not just on my public posts, my close friends. I share every moment, every like moment that I'm like, oh, this is important to this advocacy, or this is important to my thinking, or this is something that I really resonate with at the time. So I share it all. So I have like a chronological timeline of everything that's happened. So if anyone does cancel me or tries to come for me, I can literally reveal it all. I'm like, here, this is actually what I was going through before and during and after. You can decide if you still want to cancel me. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
will learn to do better, but this is what was happening.
Right. That's great because you're kind of showing your own receipts and like I've grown since this moment. Like I've
Yeah.
given myself the chance to grow, and I think that that's yeah. I completely agree with you. I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I think regardless
Mm,
there are consequences for actions, and I think that some people just need to
yes.
learn that. But if we don't give people, I'm always like, well, what do you want them to do? If you call them out on
Mm-hmm.
it, great. But are you not going to give them the chance to fix the error or fix the mistake or move on and learn from it? So yeah, I don't like the premise. Let me rephrase. I understand the premise of cancel culture. I feel like there's no
Yes.
actual result or end game or point. What you know, when you cancel somebody, it's like, okay, well, do you not want them to grow? You
Mm.
know, yeah.
I get that. It's so true. It's like, where's the growth then? Like specifically like with The Bachelor and Chris Harrison, like and Rachel Lindsay, like I agree that there's major consequences of the Bachelor franchise and what happened.
Yeah, yeah,
But also I want accountability. I want actual
yes,
growth that is shown so the people that really respect and still follow Chris Harrison, whoever else, can also grow together and also do the work.
absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
I rather have everyone healing together than one person being chastised out and having to do it themselves. And that's not the point of the communities we're building. And that's not the point of this world we're trying to create. If we
Right.
really believe in God and love and all these values that we've inherited as younger people and younger generations, and why aren't we showing that to the people that are hurting and
Yeah.
suffering?
It's all about grace. It's all about showing grace.
Grace.
And
Yeah.
I think that also, you know, when people pull up receipts from like tweets from like 10 years ago, I'm like, can we look at the
Yeah.
trajectory of what they've done since then? So like if they're
Mm-hmm.
consistent, if they consistently been posting stuff like that for the last 10 years, and it's like, okay, they're probably just a
Yes.
problematic person and they're not going to learn. But if you can see that they've made changes and they've done things differently, like get those tweets are irrelevant. Let's just not
Exactly.
focus on that.
Well, just like the kids that bullied me growing up, or the, like if I remember, like I don't remember their faces and stuff, but like it's like if they came back to my life and like, hey, I'm sorry I called you Godzilla, and then like I like blast them on social media, like I can't believe this person called me Godzilla. Like now they're trying to have forgiveness. I'm not going to give it to them. Like
Yeah.
what? Like that just sounds so gross and tacky to me. And it's like for them to even for them to even come to me and say, apologize, that must
That
mean
takes a
they've
lot.
done the work. And yeah, it
Yeah.
takes a lot. And like that means they've been holding on to that too for so
Yeah.
long.
Yeah.
And it's like, who am I to judge them? Like, it's not my place to judge them.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to address those situations. And I know that, as people grow, you're probably going to get more people that come back into your life and apologize. And even as your career grows, I'm sure there's going to be people that pop up.
Oh, we'll need a whole other podcast episode of past traumas popping up, because let me tell you, it's a lot. My therapist is working double time for me.
uh, oh well, I'm glad that you are in therapy, and that's another thing that you're actually very passionate about, is talking about
Yes.
mental health. And I'm very grateful that that conversation is more comfortable for people now, because
Hmm.
we're so quick to think that if we're having issues or we're upset or we're anxious, that there's something wrong with us. And it's like, it's a
Yeah.
normal human thing to have those type of feelings. So how have you on your platform really encouraged people to feel comfortable talking about mental health, or even going to therapy and getting help? Like, what
Right.
kind of resources or what kind of messaging do you send out in terms of mental health?
No, totally. Like, mental health is literally that's my main focus. Like, no matter what happens in my life, what moves in and out of my life, the people, the lives, like, mental health will always be my top priority. And
Mm,
because for me, that's what saved my life and given me grace and love and hope for myself. um, I have depression, I have anxiety. There are days where I don't want to get up, there are days where I feel very lonely, there are days where I just cry myself to sleep or I can't sleep. And it sucks to say that out loud, but I'm really strong and confident in who I am, and I've surrounded myself and I do self work. But I share those things because I'm human, and I've had moments of weakness that vulnerability wasn't a strength for me, and vulnerability was what made me feel like less than and not worthy. But
yeah.
I would always reach out for help, and that's something that the Asian community doesn't experience either, is knowing
Mm,
how to reach out for help. There's a lot of studies and research that say Asian therapists are usually pushed, and Black therapists too, and all Black, Indigenous people of color therapists are pushed or asked to lean into anyone that's the same minority as them and like give them more support. Because for any minority to even do the first step of getting a therapist and going into that space to talk about it is a big push, and it's not
absolutely.
common, especially in Asian cultures. Like, you don't pay money to talk about your feelings. Like, that's seen as like the devil. Like, it's the devil's work. Therapy is not important. It's not seen as valuable.
Yeah, and I
So
know
that's why,
for the
yeah,
Black community, it's a
yeah.
lot. Therapy is a big kind of taboo issue, because
Oh,
I don't want to overgeneralize, but a lot of Black
mm-hmm,
communities, like, oh well, you don't need a therapist. You have Jesus. You just
mm.
you just need to pray. You just need to pray to God about it. And it's like, well, I can have Jesus and therapist too.
Yes. Well, it's very similar to the Asian community too, very much,
Yeah,
because a lot of Asian communities are very religious. So
yeah,
it's very similar, actually. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm actually like, and that's the thing is, as a kid, I had best friends that supported me. And then as a young adult, I went to therapy. I studied psychology to understand myself. And then as an influencer, I started working with nonprofits like the Trevor Project, like GLAD, like It Gets Better, like the Human Rights Campaign, all these queer-based nonprofits and brands that gave me a space and a platform to be a voice for others. And
Hmm.
in doing that, it gave me healing and grace. I wanted to be a teacher when I was growing up. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher and a
Hmm.
principal of my own school, but I saw the politics and the political strides of education, public school specifically, and
Yeah,
I didn't like it. And I felt like I
yeah,
would be so limited doing that. So for me, I always tell people, like, teaching, when you teach people, you learn more than when you are learning. So it's important to be in both those positions in your whole life, whatever
yeah.
position you're doing. So because of my influencer platform, it's helped me connect more with now mental health organizations I'm working with closely. I did a campaign earlier this year called Be Vocal, Speak Up, and they do a lot of mental health advocacies and creating resources for that. I'm going to be working with a pretty big mental health platform that helps people connect to the right therapist, because they've learned their whole life doing it, that's one of the biggest qualms or struggles for anyone going into therapy, is finding the right therapist. And I've been
Yes.
experienced that too. I've been through at least 7 or 8 therapists,
It's
and
like
it took me
speed
a lot.
dating sometimes.
It really is. And you have to know your worth to do it, because sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this therapist, sure, like they're great. But then you have to really dig deeper and be like, is this therapist right for me? Do they fit the things I need for this relationship to really
Yeah.
benefit me?
Yeah.
Because they're there as a vessel to help you. Like, you're paying them money and they're offering you these skills and knowledge and wisdom and support.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be symbiotic in that sense, because otherwise you're just wasting both of your time, you know?
Absolutely. Well, Owen, as we come out of this pandemic,
Mm.
and we're starting to, during the pandemic, we were able to put a spotlight on a lot of these issues because people were home and, we were all on social media.
Literally.
What would you like to see specifically from this new administration in terms of addressing, a lot of these issues that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I'm so not a political person, but I'm in politics in the sense that I'm speaking up for so many things that are very
Yeah.
polarized and political. So
Yeah.
I am in politics in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think we all need to take more responsibility and really push the political parties, push the people in power to really speak for us more by signing more petitions, by calling them in, not calling them out. Like, they only have the same amount of time as we do on this
Yeah.
earth, as far as days and hours and minutes. So, but I just wish people in power and people who are trying to mobilize communities to do the work, I just hope that we can all like really lean into each other more and figure out actual stepping stones to get to a place of healing and actual advocacy to help minority communities feel included and have equality.
Yeah.
And I don't really know to be honest, I don't really know. Like, this has always been something I've been thinking about, but I still don't know the answers at all.
It's hard. It's hard to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I love the phrase "call them in and don't call them out," because if people feel threatened in any way, that's not the way to get them in your corner and get them to listen.
Yeah.
So I think that is a huge takeaway that you just said. Call them in and don't call them out. I love that.
I've been trying my best. There's many moments I want to call them out. Many moments.
Oh, for sure. But you got to take a step back. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Well, let everybody know where they can follow you and keep up with the great work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate this friendship in this space. But my name is Owin Pierson. It's spelled with an I, not an E. I always tell people, when you spell my name and you take out the I's, I become my own person. So you can find me on any platform, Owin Pierson, and I would love to, keep building community, keep building relationships that are focused on the greater good. So thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you so much. It was wonderful chatting with you. Make sure you follow him because he really does have incredible content and he always shares his heart on social media. And I've been blessed to just have him come into my life through social media and through Yahoo. So thank you, listeners, and make sure you subscribe to We Need to Talk, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.